Word Balloon is brought to you by the League of Word Balloon Listeners.
If you like comic books, then you definitely like comic art. Visit comicartfans.com to see original comic artworks and custom drawings that people have collected and posted online. Coming soon, Comic Art Fans is hosting an in-person event called the Original Art Expo that will focus on the hobby of collecting original comic art. The Original Art Expo will be held at the Doubletree by Hilton Hotel in Orlando, Florida on January 26th through the 28th, 2024. They will have over 30 exhibitors and 60 comic artists. Spend the weekend in an intimate setting with some of the best creators in the world. Purchase or commission a piece of original comic art. Visit the Comic Art and Illustration Galleries. Attend the Saturday night auction and pizza party and hang out with your fellow comic art enthusiasts. The Original Art Expo is sure to be the world's premier visual storytelling art event, so don't miss out. Go to oa-expo.com to get your tickets today and visit comicartfans.com to see what comic art collecting is all about.
Hi, I'm Alex Ross.
The two pieces are sort of a type. They're both kind of recreations of artwork that existed in the 90s. In fact, this piece here for the Avengers is in most ways a recreation or a tribute to George Perez's poster version from the mid-90s, where he did a shot that featured in it a figure of Captain America that was very similar to what I've done here, positioning of the Vision or positioning of Hawkeye, and I believe a few other elements are very similar to that piece, and it's consciously so. I was building off that inspiration, but I kind of refitted my design to fill out bigger shots of the figures so that I was making a wider composition and getting in a lot of the same characters, but still not quite as many as what George himself did, because George's thing was always to try and get in the maximum amount of content into pieces that he did.
Welcome back, everybody. Time again for Word Balloon, the comic book conversation show. John Suntress here. I am happy to welcome Christopher Priest back to Word Balloon. Priest, great to see you.
Hi, John. How are you?
Doing all right, man. Doing all right.
Where are you at, by the way?
I'm in Chicago.
Oh, okay. So you're freezing your buns off.
You know, not too bad. It's wet. It's raining.
Okay.
But it's in the 40s. So a couple of weeks ago it was really cold. And it'll,
I just saw the ad for the convention in Orlando, and I was like, Florida, in January, how excellent!
It's going to be an oasis, absolutely, for the people that are attending the OAX, absolutely, man. Geez, I'm so excited to talk to you, man. We'll start things off with Vampirella, and also, good Lord, already the people are chiming in and saying hello, so the fans are anticipating. So, and we'll get to fan questions, but so you're in the midst of another run on Vampirella, and did you stop for a while, Priest, or are you back to it, or has it been continuous?
No, Dynamite Entertainment, they hired me to work with them on Vampirella's 50th anniversary. So that was supposed to be 12 issues. And that ran, it ended up going 24 issues. And then I asked them to stop the series with 25, mainly because I really didn't know how long the series was going to go. And then I really didn't want the series to end with, 36 or 29 or some sort of odd number or whatever. I thought, well, if we wrapped it up with 25, now we have like a nice volume, that would make an omnibus, or that would, they could package subsequently or whatever. But I just figured sooner or later they'd just be giving me my walking papers anyway. So, having fought for my life and my existence on Deathstroke for the entire 2 or 3 years that we were doing that book, I didn't want to have the same sort of Damocles hanging over us on Vampirella. So I asked them to wrap it up with 25, and they didn't want to do it, and they decided, okay, all right, fine. And then I pitched them a limited series after that, where the Vampirella may or may not have married Dracula. Then after that miniseries, then they wanted me to do a year one sort of thing, and we did the year one thing. That was a lot of fun. And then we did sort of a bookend to the Dracula thing, which we're in the middle of now, called Rage, which is Vampirella Dracula Rage, and that's shipping now. So basically, I really just never left. So I just kept expecting that they were going to relaunch the monthly with a new team. But Dynamite is actually publishing Vampirella in several different iterations and with different creative teams. So it's a big universe. They have lots of room for that, and they liked what my artist Aragon Gunduz, what Aragon and I were doing, and they welcomed us back. And I would rather be welcomed back than asked to leave. So it was it was just kind of heartening that they welcomed us back. And then I think at some point publisher Nick Barucci just got the idea of like, well, if we're going to just restart another volume of Vampirella, just out of curiosity, where would we be in the numbering process? And they looked at the Warren years and the Harris years, and they looked at how many volumes and issues of Vampirella had been done, and he said, hey, we would be right about issue 666. So wouldn't it be great if we just started with issue 666? So we're going to restart the series as though, because Vampirella has been published more or less monthly for 50 some odd years by now, and so that idea came along, and he chose us, Ergun and myself, to return to the series on a monthly basis as of issue 666, and to just pick it up from there and take Vampirella now past her 50th anniversary into where we're going next.
That's outstanding, man. I have been a Vampirella reader on and off for many, many years, and certainly as a little kid, seeing those fantastic Warren issues and covers certainly piqued my interest in everything. And I mean, my God, some of the greatest artists have worked on Vampirella, and certainly I'm going to show some interiors of the current story. So I love this psychologist or psychiatrist that's trying to get to the bottom of Vampirella and everything.
Yeah, Dr. Chari. Yeah, I think that what I wanted to do with this book, there's two things I wanted to do. One is I just wanted to take her seriously, and that's not really something that's traditionally been done, where people were, no offense to other writers, but they were just kind of working the suit, and they were kind of like, well, she has these powers and she's wearing this suit, and and here's so a lot of some writers are more plot driven, where they kind of put together different very clever plot devices and these interesting characters. I tend to be a character person, where I write stuff from the inside out. So I asked myself, well, what if there was this young woman who is from another planet, who is marooned here, because if she wasn't stuck here, she'd go home, obviously. So she's marooned here, far away from home, what does she want? What does she want out of life? And what are the obstacles to getting it? And in my world, or my vision of Vampirella, I tried to put her in as close to the quote unquote real world as possible, by which I mean, in Vampirella's world, or at least as I'm writing Vampirella, nobody actually believes in vampires. Nobody believes a man can fly, and nobody believes, in the undead or demons or anything like that. So, in our 25th anniversary run, which is what you're looking at here, she is involved in a plane crash. And that's how the series starts. It starts with this plane that crashes in Los Angeles, and she is the sole survivor of that plane crash, and she is given a trauma specialist, who is this guy here, who is there to try to talk her through what is an obvious trauma. And she opens up to him and tells him that she's a vampire from outer space. And he, of course, he thinks she's crazy, so he's trying to help her through all this stuff. And comedy kind of more or less ensues, but he ends up being more or less her first real friend, or certainly first real connection or real tether to reality. And we did something similar in Black Panther, where we had this character who was a State Department guy who was assigned to Shala when he came to visit America. And the State Department guy, similarly to the psychiatrist, Dr. Shari here, the State Department guy in Black Panther, he didn't really necessarily understand or believe in superheroes, and it was just kind of a odd shock to his system to meet this guy who is this, this leader of a foreign nation who happens to pull on this kitty cat mask and leap out the window. So he became our keyhole. Everett Ross in Black Panther was our keyhole character who would take us along this journey and introduce us to this character. And in Vampirella, it's the psychiatrist, it's Dr. Chari, who doesn't believe anything that's going on here, and he becomes our point of view, our entrance into this world. So these pages that I sent you, this is not from 666. This is not the upcoming thing. These are selected pages from our existing run that I sent, that I've been distributing and sharing with the fans, mainly for fans who have never read our book, fans who like when I was writing Deathstroke, there was a lot of people who did not read Deathstroke. And it turned out they didn't read Deathstroke because they assumed they knew what the book was about. They assumed they thought it was about this bloodthirsty assassin who runs around with a sword and lops people's heads off. And Deathstroke was not about that at all. Deathstroke was about the world's worst dad. He was about this very troubled guy who had these adult children who he was estranged from. And he was a guy who loved and wanted to be loved, but was really incapable of either. So he happened to have this job that where he was this trained assassin, and that was kind of his day job. But the book wasn't about that. It was about this deeply troubled individual who, had these hangups. And similarly with Vampirella, people who never read the book don't realize that it's funny and it's poignant and it's about a single girl trying to make it in the big city. It's just that she happens to be a vampire from outer space, and that complicates things.
Very Mary Tyler
I just invite people to get past the cover and not just assume that it's just about sex and fangs and blood and stuff like that. Although there is some elements of that in there.
Sure.
The HBO series 6 Feet Under. I never watched that show because I always assumed it was about zombies, and I'm not really a zombie guy. So I thought, it's a zombie show, and then one day a friend of mine said, no, you really got to sit your butt down and actually watch a few episodes of this thing. And I did. And then I realized, no, 6 Feet Under had nothing to do with, of course, it had nothing to do with zombies. It was about a family, and they had this family business where they were undertakers. But the show wasn't even about the undertaker thing. It wasn't about death. It wasn't about corpses. It wasn't about zombies. It was about, the stress of this modern American family that was being confronted by all the issues that we are all being confronted by. And it was very well written. It was very funny. It was very poignant. Yeah. So is Vampirella. Give it a shot. Don't assume you know what it's about, because it's just a fun book. It's got terrific art. I'm just having a blast doing it. I'm so grateful that I get a chance to keep doing it.
Well, and I understand, and it much like, and I saw, in fact, when I was researching and stuff, you comparing the Deathstroke thing to 6 Feet Under, and also in this book, God, we do have a lot of characters, and I didn't realize how much her mother is an important part of the story as well. and being abandoned by her mother and really kind of forced to live here on Earth and everything. And yeah, there's a lot. There's a very personal story. I agree with ChemDog too when you said it's a woman trying to make it in the big city. Yeah, it's very Mary. Vampirella is Mary Tyler Moore essentially.
Well, yeah, with fangs, and her mom is, is just, to be honest with you, she's heavily borrowed from Agnes Moorehead's character from Bewitched. He was just this meddlesome nuisance who just comes out of nowhere and causes problems for her. And she is at once very heartless, and you think she doesn't love Vampirella because she's complicating her life. And then you realize, in the Deathstroke series, Deathstroke wanted to spend time with Ravager. Ravager was his daughter, okay, Rose.
Yes.
And he wanted to spend time with Rose. So he put a hit out on her, so he would have to protect her from some unknown assailant who was after her. But it was him all along. He just wanted to spend time with her. And then she finds out that it was all just him faking it. And he was like, my God, what you twisted man. All you ever had to do was ask if you want to spend time, and similarly, it's okay for me to plagiarize myself. This is Vampirella's mom, where she maroons them on this planet for 8 months. And they're having this adventure and they're having this Mad Max sort of, thing going on, this science fiction stuff going on this planet, and in the last issue, it occurs to Vampirella, she discovers that, that her mother has always known how to get off this planet. That we could have left months ago. And she's like, you crazy woman, why did you stick us here on this planet? And she goes, because I want to spend time with you. And it's one of those things. It's this book is a lot of fun. And much like with Deathstroke, I find, that there's this barrier because, people assume they know what the book is about. And I'm just trying to get across the counter and past the cover, and anywhere you can post that PDF or any place that people can see this. I just invite you to just sample us and check us out. Now with 666, by the way, John, we're going all the way back to the beginning. So with our 50th anniversary thing, we created our own little pocket universe for Vampirella. So the priest Gundu's Vampirella is its own creature. It's its own sort of self-contained universe. So we have our own rules and our own storylines and so forth. And as what happens when you write a book for a certain amount of time, you layer things on and things become more involved and more detailed. And what I wanted to do was I wanted to just pump the brakes, go all the way back to the beginning, and get it simple and get back to where we began, and get back to the kinds of things that you were just showing us on the screen. So if you've never read Vampirella, if you have no idea what this character is, this is a great place to jump in because we're really going back to once upon a time, there was this girl from Draculon, and that's what we're going to see in 666. And for those of you who have been reading or have been along for the ride or who are familiar with what we're doing, you'll love it because it'll be so much funnier to you because you will see that we're doing this kind of Groundhog's Day thing where we've gone all the way back to the beginning and everything is just like it was when we started, except everything has been changed. And those of you who read the book will realize none of this is right. What the hell is going on here? And for those of you who've never read the book, it's a perfect, open door for you to walk through and go and be introduced to this world and introduced to these characters. But if you haven't read the book, you get an extra thing because you'll recognize all the Easter eggs as we go along. You go, that ain't right. Something's going on here.
So, when does 666 start?
That's a good question. I believe it. I believe we ship in February.
Okay.
I don't have the exact date, and I probably should. They never tell me these things.
No worries, man. Because another thing in this sampler, I wanted to ask, although maybe with reality changing, things will change. How would you characterize Dracula's relationship with Vampirella?
Okay, Dracula will not appear in this story arc because reasons I can't tell you of how we leave him at the end
Sure.
of the current series, Rage. But I will tell you that uh, hmm. All
Yeah,
right. So
whatever you want to say.
in our issue number 25, the last issue of the monthly, Vampirella marries apparently Dracula. Basically, there's this Dracula virus, and there's this guy who has contracted the Dracula virus, and the Dracula virus will terraform someone's body, and eventually, you become Dracula. So we assume that this guy is going to become Dracula. Then he had this whole adventure, and Vampirella did this ritual, and ring around the rosy, a pocket full of posies, and boom, cured him of the Dracula virus. But then horrible things happen to him because that's what I do. I do horrible things to people. But in our 666 book, the first our issue 666, which is our first day back to school here. Surprise, he's back. He's back. They're married. She's happy. She has everything in life that she has ever wanted. She has her husband. Her mom is no longer Endora from Bewitched. Her mom is now, she's now Diana Prince, Wonder Woman. It's an idealized world where she finally has everything she's ever wanted in life. And people who had died in terrible ways in the series are back walking around, and her friends are back, and her cat's alive, and everything's just great in her life. And if you've been reading the series, you'll know that none of that makes any sense, and none of that is right. So we want to know what's going on here. So in a way, he won't show up as Dracula, but the guy who might or might not have been Dracula. I know this sounds a little crazy. The guy is back. So maybe Dracula's coming back, and maybe he's not.
Let's hear some shots of Mom.
Oh yeah, let me warn you a little bit. By the way, every time I see this character, that's Lilith right there. And she's there's nothing wrong with the color. She's that color. She's rather pale. Because she's 400 years old. She's been around the block a little bit. Every time I see this character, and now I'm forgetting the actress's voice. Who's the actress who plays Seven of Nine on Star Trek?
Jerry Ryan.
Jerry Ryan. Okay, so if you scroll back up, scroll back up to the previous page, to the start of the previous page. So right there. So don't keep going back up. Back up. All right, right there. Okay, so they're stranded on this alien planet. She's watching Wheel of Fortune while they're just waiting for to find a way off this planet. And she's watching it. She's like, "Vampirella," and I just hear Jerry Ryan's voice. "Vampirella, you hapless mortal fool." And if this was animation, and God knows, I hope one day it would be like Adult Swim.
Oh, that'd be great.
Wouldn't that be great? And have Jerry do the voice of Lilith, because I love Jerry Ryan so much. I love her characters, and I just love that voice of hers. And so that's who I'm hearing every time I see Lilith. I think Lilith is just a hoot.
That's fantastic.
And that's actually the scene where Vampirella realizes we could have left keep going. They could have left a long time ago. Keep going. And then she realizes it, and Vampirella's talking to her, and Mom goes, "Clever girl," and that's stolen from Jurassic Park, of course, the clever girl line. and Vampirella just starts screaming, "You crazy woman!" All you had to, if you wanted to spend time with me, all you had to do was ask. But
yes,
Ergun's art looks like animation cells. This looks like animation. It's just gorgeous work. Now keep going. I think we're going into year one. It's next one here. So now these are scenes for year one. So here she's 13 or 14 years old. She's on the planet Draculon. She's being hunted because of Lilith. Long story, but she's been hiding out, with this old drunk guy, and the police have finally located her. And if you keep scrolling, so she has to flee the scene here. And she's an adolescent. Keep going. She's an adolescent who has never flown before. So this is her first flight.
Yes.
So she is running from the police, and it's the first time that she had to get the wings sprouting out of her back. Keep going. And look at that. That's Ergun. Where she just takes off. Every time I get a page from this guy, he lives in Turkey. Every time I get a page from this guy, I just gasp. I go, holy moly, this guy is just so talented. And then I think the last pages are just like another therapy session with Chari, where he's telling her like, there's no such thing as werewolves, and if I can help you, but you got to do things my way and let me walk you through this. And I think it's one of these things, John, where as long as he's the skeptic, he's funny and interesting. But the moment he becomes a believer, like no offense to DC, I love DC. I love you, DC. Don't blacklist me. I love you. But like in the DC universe, like I just saw the Flash movie, and I don't know why people beat up on that movie. I actually like that movie. It has its problems. We can talk about that, but
sure.
But overall, I enjoyed it. I really liked Batfleck, and my God, I really enjoyed the other Batman whose name escapes me.
Now I'm blank. Which one?
That guy.
Michael Keaton.
Michael Keaton. I just adored seeing Michael Keaton again.
He was the best thing about the movie.
But the thing about it is, in that film, everybody just sort the average guy on the street, the average man, average woman, average child, just kind of blithely accepts the fact that they're superheroes. And maybe they have to because there's so many of them running around the DCU. I don't know.
Yeah.
But they want Flash's autograph, and they kind of accept, what's going on here, and they're kind of lining up, behind Wonder Woman and Batman and all this other stuff, And I think in the real world is more like the Marvel universe, or at least the way Stan was writing the Marvel universe. Roy, Stan, Jerry Conway. I loved Jerry Conway in the late '60s. He took over Spider-Man, and that was like the Harry Osborn on drugs and the Green Goblin, all that classic stuff there. Where the average person on the street was skeptical, if not afraid, of this nut in the costumes web swinging around town, and this other maniac on a glider, around town, And to me, just everybody has their, some people are into the CW shows. I'm more into Netflix Daredevil. You see what I mean? And it's just the approach. It's how we come at it, And I thought that Avengers Endgame was just for once and for all time, became the definitive. This is what a superhero movie is supposed to be, because it became sort of it elevated the genre past the niche stage, where it became this universal thing where like everybody sort of came together, grandmas and uncles and everybody, and it became more mythology, like more Lord of the Rings. It became larger than just the two of us chatting over lunch or something like that. And I thought, like, just how seriously the Russo brothers took it, how seriously the actors took it, and my God, how it all came to that moment with Robert Downey Jr. Robert Downey Jr., who nobody had any use for years before that moment. And we're all bawling our eyes out for Robert Downey Jr. Are you kidding me? Who would have, if I told you that 5 years before, you would have thought I was crazy.
Absolutely.
Just that dramatic moment. How this guy didn't get nominated for an Oscar is beyond me. And I went, that to me is what it's all about. And that's the general approach that I like to take, is like, I put Vampirella, I put Deathstroke, I put Superman, who we'll get to. I put them in this world that is as close to the world that we actually live in as humanly possible. So then when they leap out a window and fly, we all gasp, because the larger than life stuff all of a sudden pops against the banality of our day-to-day reality. So Doc Chari in Vampirella represents that banality, and Wintergreen in Deathstroke represents that banality. And then in Superman, it's Lois Lane who is grounding him and who is fighting to get her husband back. He's like, screw Superman, I'm trying to get my husband back. And we can dig into that when you're ready.
Absolutely, man. No, and we absolutely will. I promise you. And to tease it, our Burrow Snake says, I wish words could convey how much your writing means to me, Mr. Priest. Your Superman book has been such a blessing for me. Thank you, sir. And others also commenting. Well, first of all, Comic Boom, happy holidays. Very nice. Hey, Nerdette, very good. Yeah, man. It's Jeez. Oh, that's nice. Thanks, Araburo. He's letting everyone know to like the stream and subscribe if you don't to Word Balloon. Mike says he hears Jerry Ryan's Hustler character from the Leverage TV show in your Vampirella dialogue.
I did. I've never seen that. Wow.
Neither have I, man.
No.
But I do love her. She's great.
I do too. And by the way, thanks for reading the comments. I do not have my contacts in. I can barely see you, let alone read it.
Oh, don't sweat it. Don't. I have my glasses up, Priest. Otherwise, the screen would reflect in them. But no, I can read everything.
I wasn't told that there would be any math. I'm sorry.
Fear not.
Okay.
Fear not. I'm here to help. Ben says you're an amazing writer from Black Panther, Deathstroke, Cap and Falcon, a fantastic run. So much more. And also, someone had said they would love to see you get back to Green Lantern. And forgive me, Chris, because I read your Green Lantern novel from years ago.
That was you.
Come on, man. You know other people read it too. It was fantastic. Did you ever run on the comics as well?
I relaunched Green Lantern with this. Well, first of all, I was writing Green Lantern in Action Comics Weekly, which was like a real challenge to get that book out every single week.
I bet.
And then I was asked by Denny O'Neil, the late Denny O'Neil, to relaunch Green Lantern, and we did something in the I think it was late '80s, early '90s, called Green Lantern Emerald Dawn, which was a reboot of Green Lantern. But then there was Office Wars, where there was a behind-the-scenes struggle because Denny O'Neil was editing Green Lantern, but Andy Helfer, another editor, had previously been promised the character or had been the editor of the character. And the Emerald Dawn project was moved from Denny's desk to Andy's desk. And this goes back to what I was just discussing about approach of CW versus Netflix Daredevil, where Denny O'Neil was so grounded in the real world and making me read Carl Sagan books, and we would have long walks around Thompson Square Park in New York City. Denny and I would have long walks, spending our weekends together, plotting this book and grounding it in real science. And he wanted it to be like Larry Niven, Isaac Asimov. He wanted it to be grounded in real science fiction, and really take a hard look at how not only how the powers work, but how the universe works, and then conversely what effect all this would have on the man. And then the book got moved to Andy's desk, and Andy's approach was, "Hey, it's magic. Let's have him fight Sinestro." And this is not to put Andy down. I love Andy Helfer. He's a good friend of mine. He was a good friend of mine then. But it became this sort of creative whiplash for me, where I spent so much time thinking about Green Lantern, as I do now, thinking about Green Lantern in a certain way, and had to pivot 180 degrees and just move it from science fiction to science fantasy, and just take the guardrails off and go in this other direction. So at some point I realized, look, I've done 15 drafts of Green Lantern Emerald Dawn #1, and I still haven't pleased him yet. And I just called him and said, Andy, just call Keith Giffen, because Andy was used to working with Keith Giffen on Justice League International and other projects. Blue Beetle, that was Andy. Just call Keith. The late Keith, God, I'm so sorry we lost him. I really liked him a lot, and hey, Keith, I got you your job. So, anyways, just call Keith. And so I wrote issue 1, I plotted issue 2, and then Keith dialogued issue 2, and he and Mark, my partner, Mark Wright, took over from there. And just parenthetically, everything that I thought about Green Lantern and the approach that Danny and I took in Green Lantern, that became the platform for my heavy metal series called Entropy, which is done by me and this new artist, Montos, Montos. Montos is doing a bunch of work for DC now and so forth. But this guy, and I think I told you last time I was here, I said, when this book comes out, no one's ever going to be talking about me. This guy, it's spectacular work. Just the guy is just, the art is just unbelievable. But Entropy is kind of like, the best way I've discovered that I've been able to describe entropy is it's kind of like, it's Green Lantern if DC had the will, I'll put it that way, to go, completely Black Label with Green Lantern. It's like, let's really think this character through, and how would this ultimate power in the hands of a human being, how would it affect that human being, and in turn, what effect would it have on the universe? It's a great series, not just because I wrote it, but mainly because of this unbelievable artwork that's attached to it. And then Heavy Metal, ran into financial difficulties. So the book is completely drawn, it's lettered, it's colored, it's completely done, and it's locked on somebody's hard drive until the lawyers figure out how to move past this. So maybe one day it'll get out there, but I'm telling you, the dog is ready to go out for a walk. There's no delay. It's completely ready to go. They could put it out tomorrow. They could Random House, if you're listening, they could just put it all in one hardcover and put it out tomorrow. And it's a guy you never heard of, but flip through that bad boy and you're going to want to buy it. It's unbelievably good.
Comic Boom says, I love Entropy. Matos's work is also great on John Stewart Green Lantern.
Oh, yes. Yeah. He's doing a great job.
That's cool. That's really cool. Geez, all right, we teased it. I really do want to talk to you. And also, I'm really glad that the questions and comments people are making, because they want to do Priest Greatest Hits, and I'm thrilled to do that with you. But I gotta talk to you about Superman Lost. Priest, this is so great because it's a great cosmic story. I felt the hopelessness on Superman's part. He's on a routine Justice League mission, and all of a sudden is flung across the galaxy where it's going to take him 20 years to get back home. And at least in his mind. And then he comes back, but really, I guess, in DC's Earth 1 or whatever the hell it is, he's only been gone for a few weeks. And you see the burden in his eyes, and you see the disconnect between him and Lois. And it's this wonderful internal Superman story. And just like you were saying about Vampirella, people might think, oh, it's a cosmic story about Superman, whatever. It's a very internal look inside Superman and stuff, and Lois and Luthor, and a character named Hope. It's fantastic, Priest. Truly, this really caught my attention. It's one of my favorite books of the year. I kid you not.
Yeah, I think it suffers from the same problem as I guess everything I write, where people just go, well, we assume we know what this book is about. It's about this guy being lost in space, and just to. You got most of it right. He's actually only gone a couple of hours, not a couple of months. He's only gone a couple of hours.
Oh my God, I didn't realize that. Wow.
He leaves for a mission. He leaves Lois sitting at her breakfast table or whatever, and Lois is working on a story. And then Lois falls asleep at the table, and when she wakes up, Superman is standing in the living room behind her, and she goes, "Wow, that was quick," And Superman goes, "Quick? I've been gone 20 years, So yeah, he's only been gone a couple hours, but John, nothing is familiar to him, So like Clark Kent goes back to work and he can't remember what he used to do there, and Jimmy is like a ghost to him, and Perry and he's only been gone a couple hours, but he has the hardest time re-entering his life. And his wife is living with a ghost now, and so the book is not about the mission, although we see the mission. Obviously, the book is about how Lois gets her husband back. That's what it's about. And throughout the journey, it's kind of like either slipping into poverty, which I've done once or twice, or becoming a drug addict, which I haven't done, but I've had close family members and friends who have. In other words, it's like this slippery slope where you don't even realize that you're losing it all until you've lost it all. So in the early issues, he's sort of treating it as an intellectual problem, navigation problem. He's he's like, wow, Lois is going to kill me when I get home, and I tell her this story, because he realizes he's going to be gone for quite a while. He's going to be gone for a couple of weeks or whatever. And then a couple of weeks turns into a couple of months, turns into a couple of years. And eventually, you start to see, we start breaking this man down. And too many of us, myself included, kind of put Superman on this pedestal where he becomes unrelatable, because we strip him of his manhood because he's this alien from outer space. No, he's a guy from Kansas. Okay, let's get that straight, first of all. He was raised here. He identifies as human. He thinks of himself as human. Yes, he has these powers. He's aware he's from another planet. But this is a guy from Kansas, okay? This is a guy who was taught his values by this farmer. So I had to really walk through this with the editors at DC, and including Mike Carlin, who edited The Death of Superman, who was one of the greatest Superman editors ever. But now at the time, he was working in the television division, so he wasn't hands-on with the comics anymore. But Mike and I are old friends, and we've known each other forever. And I've spent hours and hours on the phone. So, I have to give Mike credit. I have to give Dave Van Domelen credit. He's a professor in Texas. He teaches physics, applied physics, or some kind of. I'm sorry, Dave, I'm screwing this up. I don't know what you teach, but he's a big brain guy. So anything in there that sounds big brain, that sounds right, that's Dave. Anything in there that sounds stupid, that was me. Getting the science right and all this other stuff. But yeah, it's just one of these things where at first he's not taking it very seriously until he does, until it's the reality of his situation starts crashing in on him, and we break this man down all the way to the bone. And I had to be very careful, because I know fans, they hold Superman in such high esteem, and I know some fans are going to go, well, no, he would never break. He's Superman. And I go, you're out there in outer space, and you're freezing your butt off, and you're alone for years at a time. That's got to take a toll on somebody, So we have all that, and you have the poignancy in there, and then you have a lot of humor that I had to dish in a lot of, because I'm just a child. I can't help myself, so I have to put in a bunch of humor, because otherwise the book would be unbearably grim if we didn't have Lobo Space Dolphin show up, and we have these space scavengers, these little orange guys who show up, and they're bargaining because they want to buy Superman's cape, and so forth. That's lots of fun. And then this Green Lantern pops up out of nowhere. This is who John was talking about, this woman named Hope, who shows up, and Superman thinks, well, here's my ride home. Hey, it's a Green Lantern. Here's my ride home. And then Hope goes, what's a Green Lantern? She has no idea what a Green Lantern is.
Yeah.
So it's this wonderful thing. And what I did was, we know in issue 1 that, spoiler alert, he makes it back. In issue 1, he's back, because he's back on page 5. So, because I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to write this story where I go, will Superman make it home? Because that's just BS. He's going to make it home.
100%. Yes.
But more than that, I wanted to ground the story in the reality of Lois's experience. And Lois becomes our keyhole character who takes us through this, just like Chari was our keyhole character in Vampirella, and Everett Ross was our keyhole character in Panther. Here's a character the readers can identify with. She's an ordinary person who is encountering this extraordinary situation and this extraordinary personal conflict with our hero, and she's the one who's taking us by the hand and walking us through it. And she tries this, and she talks to this person, and she goes to Wonder Woman, and she tries that, and she tries a psychiatrist, and she tries everything she can do to help him. And then, desperate because she can't figure out any other way to help him, she turns to Lex Luthor.
Yep.
And now we take it up a notch.
Yep.
So it's a fun series. I hope you pick it up.
It truly, man. You as you say, yes, he is back by page 5 of the first issue. But when he is in the cosmos, in those scenes, you see the desperation, you see the frustration, the momentary relief of, okay, Green Lantern, like you said. There's another cosmic hero that you think will help him, get home and everything. No, man, it's I love it, Priest. Truly, it's one of my favorite recent Superman stories, and also, I think Philip Johnson did a great job with Superman and Warworld. Completely different story. This
Yep.
is so internal,
Yep.
and yeah, I mean, Greg Rucka. One of my favorite things he ever told me on one of my interviews with him was, yeah, but bullets bounce off Superman, but you can break his heart.
Yeah.
And that's what we're seeing in this story.
Oh yeah.
And also Lois is, and I love when Lois is heroic. And it's like Lois is really, this is that connection between the two of them. And it's like, you can see that subtext of, hey, it's me, talk to me. Why aren't you able to tell me what happened to you? And he can't, because it's been 20 years. And like you said, he forgot how he acted. He's not himself anymore. And it's
I kept thinking about Star Trek 4, the one with the whales.
Sure.
where Bones is trying to talk to Spock and trying to to get inside his head and I need you to, I'm trying to understand what you went through. And Spock / Nimoy turns to him and he says, in order for me to do that, we'd have to have some common frame of reference. So what's the common frame of reference? How does Superman relate to this? And the only way you can really write something like that truthfully is if you have lived it yourself. If you've been married, you've been in a relationship, you've been close to someone, and if you've been estranged from that person and you're trying to find your way back emotionally to that place where you two used to be, whether it's a love interest, a spouse, a mother, a father. I was estranged from my mother for a very long time before she passed away. And it was painful. And we could be in the same room and we just couldn't get back to where we were when I was 12 because that was gone. That had been violated. That had been, damage had been done there. And it's almost like you've got your hand out and you're holding the person at some distance, and try as you will, you can't quite bring yourself to let that arm down. So Superman is not able to do that until he finds out the crap that Lex did, because she goes to Lex, and of course, him being Lex, that's going to turn out to be a bad idea. And in an ironic way, Lex actually does help him get home. Because it snaps him out of this malaise he's in.
Yes.
And now he just wants to wring Lex's neck. And Dan Jurgens stopped in because we were running behind schedule. And I've known Dan forever. And I just had a great time where Dan is just drawing Superman beating the hell out of Lex Luthor repeatedly. Yes. And it's gorgeous. It's like Death of Superman. It's Dan Jurgens and Brett Breeding. What more can you want? But yeah, yep. It's just this is a story where you think you know where it's going. Guess again. That's all I can tell you. And by the way, Carlo Pagulayan is the hero of this was his book. So Carlo, hats off, congratulations to Carlo. Unbelievably great work with with him and Jason Patz and Jeremy, our colorist, Willie Schubert, our letterer. It's the whole team from Deathstroke. If you read our Deathstroke, if you liked our Deathstroke, this is the entire Deathstroke creative team moved on to Superman, and just everybody is just swinging for the fences on this book.
Totally agree, man. Snake wanted to know, do you have more different Superman ideas that you'd like to pursue, because he's loving this series?
Well, yes and no. Sure. It'd be great to do, I guess, more Superman. I feel like I'm kind of at a stage in my career where I'm crossing things off a bucket list, where I'm just going,
sure.
And I'm just grateful that 45 years later, thank you, that somebody finally let me write this character. I'm not a guy that people tend to hire for their top tier characters. I'm not exactly sure. It could be my sterling personality. But I think it has, something to do with the fact that there is an appetite for a certain type of approach and a certain type of writing, and I am frequently the square peg trying to get into that round hole. So a lot of that's kind of up to DC. I would ideally like the Brian Bendis deal, and I expressed this to DC, and I think they chuckled, they just laughed and laughed, But I said, I I know I'll never get the Brian Bendis money, but I don't want to write another Superman story. I want to be the god of Superman. I want you to hand me the franchise and go away and just let me do something different and new with Superman, rather than what I feel. At times, I feel that we are spending too much time in nostalgia, and we're going, here's the good old days, and here's what Superman should be, or here's what Spider-Man should be, or whatever like that. And I think that we have that is attributing to the attrition in our fan base, because we have people who have been like myself, who have been reading comics their whole lives.
Yes.
And we're ready for something new. We're ready for the publishers to take a chance. And whether you liked what Brian did with Superman or you dislike what Brian did with Superman, at least he took his shot, right? He took his shot, and he went out there, and it was brave, and it's like it's like being a stand-up comedian or a good preacher. I've never been a comedian. I have been a preacher. I can't be a good preacher if I'm afraid. I have to go out there, stand before the people, and take my shot. And maybe I fall on my face, or maybe I actually do some good out there, But that's what I would want, hand me the keys and let me drive, Or I don't know, maybe we'll do another thing like this. I don't know, but I don't see them giving anybody, not just me. I don't see them giving anybody the Brian Bendis keys anymore. But if they did, I'd like to apply for that job.
No, I hear you, man, and I think you're right, and this is the eternal struggle of, you want the familiar, but again, people like us. I'm 59, Priest. I've been reading DC, like you said, all my life as well, going back to the 70s, and I want more internal. I think there is so much more to the characters than the sameness that we get in the usual Superman stories. And you're right. I think Bendis did take a moment to really get inside of Superman and all the other characters as well, and really make them sing. I think King did the same thing in Batman, and a lot of what he did in Batman. So, I mean, the opportunity.
And they ran him out of town for it,
Well, and you would hope that Black Label is a place where these kind of stories
could happen.
Is Lost considered a Black Label story?
No, but it wasn't until we were like on issue 5 that somebody said, "Why didn't we do this as Black Label?" And I don't know. I just work here. But back to what you were saying though, it's fun now to criticize the Marvel Universe films or the DC Extended Universe. Okay. And now that people are kind of like, it's become sort of this game now where we're all waiting with our knives out rather than looking for what's good in the Flash. We're, okay, I could get past some of the bad CGI, and the baby in the oven wasn't like my favorite part.
Yeah, that was
that kind of thing.
Yeah,
but you can't argue that wasn't fun film. I can think of worse ways to spend 90 minutes. John.
I hear you, Priest. I got to be honest, and it's nothing against Ezra Miller, the person.
I thought he did a good job.
But I have to admit, the characterization of Barry Allen in the DCEU, I didn't feel like Ezra Miller was the right actor to play that Barry Allen. And to have two versions of that Barry Allen made it a little less enjoyable for me. That said, I thought the Supergirl character was interesting.
Yep.
Keaton did a great job.
Yep.
It was it's like somebody just got an old
overcoat on a light, right? It just turned on a light. He shows up in that, and he puts and at first I really didn't know who he was when he shows up in the kitchen, because I was like, oh crap, that's him, but and as far as Ezra goes, I guess what I did was, at some point I surrendered to the idea that and this is back in Justice League.
Sure.
I surrendered to the idea that this is who Barry Allen is in this DC Extended Universe.
Yeah.
Because the Barry Allen, as I wrote him, as I remembered him, was obviously not that guy. So at some point I went, okay, this ain't my Barry Allen, but I will enjoy this performance for what it is. But the point out, I guess the point I was trying to make was lost somewhere ago because I'm old. But the point I was trying to make is that I've had good and bad experiences in terms of how these characters have been reinterpreted for film and streaming and so forth.
Sure.
Where I've discovered new things, where people have new writers have come along with new interpretations and found new blood in Spider-Man. They found, like Spider-Man shows up. Like I've seen the Spider-Man films. I liked virtually all of it, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Different iterations of Spider-Man. But when that character showed up in Civil War, I went, there you go. I went, sure. These guys, and I'm talking about the writing. The acting was great too, but I'm talking about the writing right now. These guys understand what this guy's about. It's like, what was the line in Airport where Spider-Man goes, oh, you have a metal arm? And that's so Spider-Man, right? And I went, or in any number of the earlier films right up through Endgame, where as a writer, as a guy who's been doing this for 40 years, I would sit there and go, wow, that's brilliant. I wish I had thought of that. And that's what I want to see. And that's what readers want to experience. We want that experience. I remember reading Frank Miller's Daredevil. Now, mind you, I used to work there. I knew Frank Miller, and became a fan of Frank Miller. I
sure.
worked 2 doors over from Denny O'Neil. I saw Frank all the time, so he, and once he took over for McKinsey, he started writing Daredevil. I would go home with the Daredevil comic book, and I would read this thing, and I'd get to page 20 or 18 or whatever it was in those days.
Sure.
But you get to the last page, and you put the comic down. You just go, holy crap, and you're kind of pissed because it's over. And you go and you're looking at the letters page and the ads. You're like, it's got to be more, right? There's more, And I went, and that's the experience that I think everybody who reads comics, who loves comics, wants to have. We want to fall in love with the characters. We want the work to be so good, the art, the writing, all of it to be so good that it's an immersive experience and it's an emotional experience. There was this scene where, the warlocks, or not Morlocks with an M, the Morlocks had kidnapped Vanessa,
yes.
Kingpin's
yes.
wife,
Yes.
And you get toward the end of the story and Kingpin is alone in his office, and this wedding band comes flying in from off panel and bounces off his desk. And it's Vanessa's wedding band. And he picks it up, and you just see Kingpin, this giant asshole, excuse my language, but this guy, but you see him break just from holding this wedding band. And now he wants to know what's Daredevil's price. And the price is releasing the mayor or whatever the story was. Excuse me, Frank. Yeah. It's been a while since I read that. But I went, this mother effer, I'm reading this going, you bastard, because you came through the door after me and you've been in the business like, 10 minutes and you're this good, and that's the experience that I had, that I want to have when I read comics. And when I move up to my computer, and I'm banging out my little hack work, my little nickel and dime pony show here. Win or lose, John, I am desperately trying to give you that moment where you go, holy crap, that bastard. That's what I want to have happen.
You got me hanging on issue 9 of Superman Lost. I don't know when 10 comes out, but and I suspect maybe there might be a delay.
Woo! 10 was wow almighty. I think 10 might have ended some marriages. It was really tough. There's just there are reasons that I won't go into because they're personal, but they're, I wrote this a long time ago, so it's not my fault. Okay.
Okay.
There were lots of production issues. There was lots of issues and personal issues going on with Carlo. And it was just tough to get that book closed. It is at the printer. It should be out, I would imagine, in early January. Again, I don't have a date.
No problem.
And I'm just hoping and praying that I didn't blow it, because this is a story that you go, how on earth are you going to land this plane? How are you going? I mean, we already know he got home. That's not the question. The question is, how do you put a satisfying button on this? How does Lois finally get her man back? Because she's tried everything there is to try. And then how do you do all that in 20 pages? And of course, I won't give up the cliffhanger, but the cliffhanger for 9 has to be one of the greatest cliffhangers.
Fantastic, Bruce. Fantastic. And it really has me wondering.
By the way, that cliffhanger, that got the people at DC too, because all of a sudden my editor was under siege by the higher ups on top of the higher ups going, what are you doing? You can't do that. What are you doing? And then, so we had to sort of give up how how issue 10, how the series resolves itself, in order to calm them down. Before a minute, I was about to get everybody on my team fired. I mean, you gotta see the cliffhanger in issue 9 and just understand that nobody above my editor knew what we were really up to or what was going on. But all of a sudden there was okay, slam on the brakes. Priest has lost his mind. He can't do this. So there you go.
Hey man, no, break some windows. I am for it. That's good. Well, honestly.
But let me just say one thing, John.
Sure.
But I promise you, I will not betray the reader's trust. I understand who the character is. I understand your investment with the character. So don't freak out. I will not, going back to Bendis for a minute, I'm not suggesting that Bendis broke trust with the readers, but I'm saying that he took his shot, he took his chances, and I think that kind of rubbed some readers the wrong way. So it's kind of like, yes, we want change, but we want you to respect the character. We want you to stay in your lane. How do I do something interesting and stay in my lane? So you'll have to tell me if we made it or not. We'll have to come back here after issue 10 comes out, and then you tell me I stick the landing or not. That's all.
Oh, you can count on it. No, that's great. Well, and I remember I did a panel at Terrificon, the Connecticut show, with Denny O'Neil and Jim Starlin, and they were talking. And it's funny because DC has just re-released Death in the Family with the alternate scenes of Robin living or Jason living. And
wow, really?
Oh yeah, it's
I didn't know that.
It's coming out, but if it's not already out, I get advanced stuff. I'm on the press list, but both Starlin and Denny went into detail about killing Jason. And how the higher ups are like, what are you doing? You're killing Robin. And they're like, no. It's not Robin. It's a Robin. And Dick Grayson's fine. No. Right. Because, again, they don't understand the stories and just the consequences that came of it. I mean, it cost Starlin his gig. I mean, luckily it worked out for him. He went back to Marvel and did all that great, Infinity.
Oh, I didn't know that. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, really?
And I'm like, oh, my God, I hope I'm not, opening
Nobody likes Jason. Nobody likes Jason. No, everybody was voting 2 and 3 times. Kill.
I spent my 50 cents to kill Jason. Absolutely. 100%. But that's the thing. It's like, no, you need to provoke people. You need to, and that's what I was hoping for. And I think we get it in a lot of Black Label stories. I think what Tom King did with Adam Strange on that Black Label series was really radical. And that's great. And the same with Human Target. I thought that was a great series. And it's like, there's got to be room, and I'll put it in the simplest terms. There's got to be room for the Adam West Batman and the Frank Miller Batman. And they should be able to come out simultaneously without any waves of, well, wait a minute, this, I don't understand. First of all, us adult readers, we do understand. Keep it out of the hands of the kids. Let them read the Adam West Batman. Let them read the basics, and that's okay. But don't deny us older readers the opportunity to get inside these characters' heads and really explore. And I think that's what you did with Lost. Oops, your microphone's off, Priest. If you get
I was talking to
I beg your pardon. All right.
I know I got the heat on and I'm starting to roast here, so I just told her to turn.
Okay, brother.
But with Tom, well, first of all, there's a lot of money tied up in these characters. So it's, and now that Disney owns Marvel, and who owns DC this week? It's Discovery
Yeah,
Plus.
exactly.
Still okay.
Discovery, Warner. Yeah, Warner Brothers Discovery.
Warner Disco. So there's a lot of corporate interest, and now that they've actually made successful film franchises, now there are billions with a B, billions of dollars swirling around, Wonder Woman. So I want to see what Tom does with Wonder Woman, and what they will allow him to do within, because Tom and I, we're very different writers, but I think we both want to do that thing. We want to do, we want to do the familiar, and yet explore. I would not like to see Tom or myself relegated to secondary characters or tertiary characters. I don't want to see us relegated to the human targets and the Adam Stranges of the universe. I think we really desperately need to see, that sort of energy on the front lines as much as possible. I have just nothing but admiration for Tom, and I think in fact in Superman there was lots of places where I was like cribbing from him, if not necessarily a specific bit of business from Tom, but where I was kind of emulating his style or thinking about how Tom would do something, and then just lots of places where I would just be stuck for an idea, and I would just sit here and go, what would Mark Waid do? And then I'd know what to do. The spirit of Mark Waid, would enter the room, or I would just call Mark Waid, which always works too, that kind of thing. But these are amazing writers. I'm really excited to see what Jason Aaron is getting ready to do. Not only is he a terrific writer, he's a terrific person. I've met him a few times, and I'm just like, well, that's interesting. Jason Aaron on Superman, there's just I do think 85 years in, John, I think we've only just begun. There's still so much room to explore, because for most of that 85 years, we were doing this sort of silver age stuff where it was just plot device, and then we have, Beppo, the super monkey, who would come in with the gold kryptonite and boom, would solve the problem or whatever. So we weren't really doing character-driven Superman or character-driven Batman. So it's only within the last, 20 years, 30 years, whatever it's been, that we've been doing these kind of introspective deep dives. So there's still lots of room. And same thing with Vampirella, where for years they were just kind of working the suit. No offense to other writers, to Steve Skates or other writers, Archie. These are brilliant writers. These are great guys, but they weren't doing what I'm doing. What I'm doing is giving her a pulse, and I'm going, what would this person actually be like? So if you like what Tom King does, I'm not doing what Tom King does specifically, but it's the same sort of idea where he is taking Christopher Chance, or he's taking Adam Strange, and he's going, okay, stop the presses. What would these characters actually be like if they were breathing and walking around, and what would their conflicts be? What would their challenges be? And he's looking beyond the ray gun, and he's looking beyond, the gimmick of Mr. Miracle and so forth. All that's in there. But what the fun part about the series is actually getting inside the characters' heads and roaming around in there. And there's nobody better at it than Tom.
Well, you're selling yourself short, Chris, because I think you're doing it. I think Brian does it as well. The better writers. The problem was for decades, the company didn't realize, both companies, that, Stan would be, college kids love the Hulk. And it's like, yes, they did, but like all of a sudden it sunk in that, wait, adults like this stuff too, and we want something grittier, and with, again, we still love the characters, but like you said, we want the internal stuff. And it took a long time for the companies to recognize that. It took Miller doing Dark Knight, and it took Moore and Gibbons doing Watchmen, and the various tentpole comics that really made a difference. And it's, I really think you're right. I think it's only been in the last few years where it's like, all right, we've got this adult audience. Let's cater to them. And I think they're trying, but like you said, there's still the corporate masters that still see it as we got to sell birthday cakes. We got to, licensing.
And then some of that is out of DC's hands or out of
Yeah.
Marvel's hands,
100%.
where they go, we would like to do this. And there's been times when I've had stuff approved at that level, at the publisher level, at the Jim Lee level, you know,
Yes.
and then had somebody in corporate. There's one project that I won't mention because, you know, I might be doing it over at Skybound.
Hey, great.
But there was a project that was approved at DC, was championed by 3 different group editors, not just editors, but the supervisors. 3 different group editors, and Marie Javins loved it as well. And it was all thumbs up, you know. And then somebody from corporate said, no, we're not going to do it because of this or that consideration that was outside of the merits of the idea itself, but it had to do with marketing and other things that were going on that I won't get into. So every now and then somebody in a suit, you know, and see, for years Paul Levitz kept us away from that.
Yes.
You know, because Jeanette, God bless Jeanette Kahn, for years Jeanette Kahn was the person who would go into the Whirling Knives, and she would deal with the suits. She would deal with Hollywood. She would deal with Burbank. She would deal with these people, you know, and Paul would be running the store here in New York, there in New York. And, you know, and now, you know, with those people no longer being our firewall between us and the corporate thing, we actually have them, you know, they read all the scripts. They read everything now. And then they go, oh gosh, you can't give Spider-Man a dog. You know, we don't approve that.
Wolverine can't smoke cigars anymore, which
is what I'm saying.
Get, but it's so small, and it's like, all right, you know, I mean, us old timers are like, I get it, but
I
really,
understand the point. Yes, we want to be good role models for kids. You know, kids really aren't reading this, and then. You know, I just had this discussion today with Dynamite, where we were trying to decide how many butts can we show in an issue of Vampirella. 1 butt, 2 butt, 3 butts. How many butts? Let's get a butt count of, you know. So the Warren, you know, when Jim Warren was publishing Vampirella,
yes,
you know, the rule was no genitalia, no nipples. Okay, so
makes sense.
You get like a side of a breast occasionally. Yep. You know, and every now and then you see maybe part of a tushy or something like that. But it was basically whatever would pass muster on broadcast TV today. You know, whatever could be on NYPD Blue, for example.
I'm totally.
They had the rules on NYPD Blue of how many butts and how much side of a breast could you see. You know, so I was negotiating that with them, because Ergun turned this page in, this beautiful page. You know, and I think I wrote in the story that it's early in the morning and Vampirella's out on this balcony, and I said she's wearing a robe, but I maybe it lost somewhere in translation. She wasn't wearing a robe, you know. So there became this whole conversation about it, you know. But some of this stuff, you know, is ends up in the purview of the overlords, whose concerns. Rightly so. They're very concerned about, you know, this franchise. Oh no, what I said today was, kids don't read Vampirella, and they don't read Vampirella for 2 reasons. One, retailers tend to segregate Vampirella because Vampirella, you know, has a culture around it of being basically an adult comic. It is 100%. Not, but it is not. It's a fun comic book. It's got a little titillation to it, but it's not anything like Jim Warren was. It's not that anymore. It's really and then we did year 1, where for half of Vampirella year 1, she's a kid. She's a kid who's sneaking a cow onto a subway. Okay. And I'm going, why are you hiding that behind the counter? Ooh, we have to hide this behind the counter. It's a child sneaking a cow on the subway. You know, let it live. You know, but it's she's got the character has a stigma about it. You know, and the argument I made for the butt count was, you know, our audience is we are playing to an audience of adults. By and large, children don't read comics anymore. That's our fault collectively, the collective our fault, because we allowed Dick Grayson to grow up, which I thought was a terrible idea. Because that was fan service.
Yes, it was.
Archie Andrews never grew up. Betty never grew up.
Right.
Richie Rich is still a kid.
Right.
Casper, Friendly Ghost, still a dead baby. And I thought that once Disney with Mickey Mouse and Minnie and Goofy, they recycle their audience every 4 to 8 years, and they bring in a new crop of kids and introduce them to these characters and to this idea and to this universe. DC was good at that for decades. They were good at that.
100%.
And bringing in the new audience and then you would sort of graduate from DC to Marvel, frankly, and right. DC was doing, was the best at being DC, and I can't explain that. Just the Kurt Swan, Murphy Anderson, the Irv Novick Flash, this classic stuff, they were the very best at doing that, and then Marvel was its own identity and its own place. And it all was this sort of Stan Lee worldview, a very hopeful worldview, but a very different place from Marvel. So you kind of went from DC to Marvel, and there was plenty of room for everybody. And we were all selling 2 million comics, a month, and per issue. Now, mind you, the Mafia was putting like a third of that into a paper shredder, but that's a different conversation. Okay, it was just that kind of idea, God, I was going someplace with this, and now I'm spacing out where I was going with it.
I'm assuming comics for kids, and now
right, there you go. Yeah, so I said, look, no kids aren't reading Vampirella because we left kids alone a long time ago, which was a big mistake, because now we are singing to an increasingly shrinking choir. We are playing to this choir that's getting smaller every year. But I assure you, no children will be harmed by the butts in Vampirella, and more to the fact, kids these days they have actual porn. They have access.
Yes, they do.
They have porn that you and I could only dream of when we were 12.
100%. No, we had Sears catalogs with women in underwear. That was our porn.
This is what I'm talking about. Well, see, I was more prurient than that. I would go, with my friends down to the newsstand, and one of them would distract the guy at the counter, and I'd get a copy of like Playboy or something,
sure.
and stick it up my pants leg or something, wrap it around my calf, and walk out the store with it. I mean, it was like all I could do to be like, like under the covers in my room with a flashlight, looking at like, this issue of like, Playboy. Where like, back in those days, you didn't see that. They didn't reveal that much. Playboy was really tame. It didn't really show you that much, But nowadays, I'm scared to death. These poor kids. It's like, I've got a very close friend who has a granddaughter, and the granddaughter has a cell phone. I said, well, did you put parental controls? Did you turn the parental controls on the cell phone? I mean, it's an iPhone. Apple has great parental controls. You should turn those on. And she just kind of rolls her eyes like she does every time I advise. If I told her the sky was blue, she would find a way to, blow that off. The sky's not blue. But I'm just terrified because she's an impressionable preteen and giving an impressionable preteen a cell phone that you are not monitoring through parental controls is like handing her a loaded gun. Because now 100%. She's wandering around the internet where, everywhere you go, there's porn. Everywhere you go, there's weirdos, pretending to be little kids, meet me after school, that kind of stuff. You're just asking for it, So my argument with Dynamite was like, kids today have real porn. They're really not going to be freaked out by seeing, Vampirella's butt on this page here. But let's get like let's settle on some sort of formula, 1.5 butts per issue or whatever, and move on. So that was our discussion, today.
I can't. It's amazing, Priest. I swear. Yeah, I do feel for you guys. It always comes down to writing, Priest, and that's the thing. Whether it's television, film, or comics or novels, it's got to be in the writing, and
Yeah,
that's
but
where.
they remember the artwork just like they remember
Oh yes,
the Robert Downey performance. But if somebody hadn't written that performance in Endgame, if somebody hadn't written that snap, you see what I mean? If those two
I do.
guys who are brilliant writers whose names are escaping me right now because I'm trying to remember them. And I met them and they were so kind to me. And now I'm being a jerk because I can't remember the guys who wrote Endgame. But those two guys who wrote Endgame, just brilliant, brilliant writers. If
Okay,
they hadn't come up with that, there'd be nothing for Downey to play.
right, 100%, man.
You know, and as much as I love Alex Ross, as much as I love, you know, for that matter, my guy Carlo, you know, and you know, your favorite artist here, you know, write in JR, your famous artist here, you know, the exception to the rule are you know, writer artist guys like Miller, you know, who can dazzle us in both ways, you know, and who could just take our breath away in how they express themselves.
Mike says, is it Marcus and McFeely that wrote Endgame?
Yes, I think so. Yes, that sounds right to me. Yes.
I mean, I know the Russos directed it, but yeah. You know.
Yeah. And
Cool.
I was on the set of not Endgame. What's the one before that?
Infinity War.
Yeah, I was on the set of Infinity War, and these guys came over, and they were very gracious, very kind to me. And I had spoken to them by email before. And hey, Mark Ruffalo pushed past me to get to the craft services table.
Sure.
You know, if you're ever invited to a movie set, by the way, let me tell you something. The food is outrageous. They spoiled it. I don't know how they don't all just get like big and fat like me, but they had great food there. Being on a movie set is the most exciting 15 minutes of your life, followed by 6 hours of sheer boredom.
I'm with you. I've been, yes.
Because I'm sitting there and I'm watching Ruffalo and Scarlett Johansson do this scene, and they're in the Quinjet, and they built this doggone Quinjet. The Quinjet is on the stage. It's this huge Quinjet suspended from the ceiling. I'm like, oh, you know, and it's great when you get there and you watch them do the scene. You go, wow, that was awesome, and then they do it again. You go, wow, that was even better. And then they do it again. Wow, that was really great. You know, and then you're sitting there for an hour while they're adjusting the lights because now they're moving for this other shot. Okay, so like an hour later, now they're going to start all over again, and they start doing this, and it's the same like 3 minutes of 3 pages of script or whatever it is, you know, and they're doing it over and over and over, and then they stop, and now it's another hour. No, they stop and they break for lunch, and then they come back, and then there's another hour of them adjusting the lights, and they do, you know, and now they're doing the close up of Scarlett, right? And now, you know, and another hour, and now they're doing the close up, the reverse of Ruffalo, and I'm going, Jesus, let me out of here. You know, we were doing they were doing like a walking talk with Chadwick Boseman, and this was on location here, on location in Atlanta. And so I was on the set for that, and I got to meet Mr. Boseman, which was just great. And he's a comic book fan. He knew who I was, and that was incredibly flattering that he would come over and he just ran over and gave me this big bear hug. And I thought I was being thrown out. That's what I thought was happening. So why is this man charging at me? Yeah, you know. So they're doing this walking talk down this hill, and it had rained the night before. It was freezing in the morning, mud up to my knees, ruining my shoes. My shoes were just toast, you know, and it was just, you know, and then every time they walked down the hill, they were walking down the hill, and I think somebody was asking Shala for his help, and they're walking down the hill, and they pass these guys that are tending sheep, and at the bottom of the hill, that's where the Winter Soldier comes out of this hut, you know. So they did this thing, and every time they walked down the hill, one of the sheep would take a dump. And Anthony Russo or the other Russo, one of the Russo guys would go cut and expletive, you know, because we got to trudge back up the hill, you know, and we got stuff to do. We're tired, you know, and they trudge, you know, they reset, they start again, and they walk down the hill, they walk and talk down the hill. The sheep takes another sheep, you know. Oh crap! Back up the hill again. That kind of thing. So at some point, I turned to Chadwick and go, Mr. Bozeman, it was just an honor meeting you. And I'm so thrilled to be here. But you know what? I have to leave. I just can't. It's cold, and I want to go home. And I really had a new appreciation for what actors do, because yes, they make a lot of money, John. But believe me, those people, those men and women, those people, they arrive on the set very early. They spend hours getting all this stuff glued to their face, and then they're on their feet for 18, 20 hours, going up and down and up and down and up and saying the same thing over and over and over and over. I really had an appreciation for just how hard these people work. They honest to gosh, they really do work very hard on these things. It takes a long time. Yeah.
Yeah, that's incredible. But Bozeman was aware that, you did so much for Panther and everything. And
oh yeah.
He knew who you were. That's so great, man. Oh, that's wonderful. And I'm sure, God, like the rest of us, I mean, and even more so for him. I mean, like, right, you provided the Bible for him for what he was doing.
Well, yes and no, because his Panther is like the prince who becomes king. My Panther had been around for a long time. So my Panther was much more like Christian Bale's Batman. He was more taciturn. He spoke less. He was more mysterious. And my Panther book was about all these people trying to second guess, what is Panther about to do next? So it would, if they had done a strict interpretation of my character rather than a blended model of Ta-Nehisi's character and McGregor's character and so forth.
Okay.
But if they had done a strict interpretation of my character, it would have been a whole different. It would have been much more like The Batman, that film. It would have been much closer to that, which I really loved. By the way, I some people love it or hate it, but I've watched that movie about 20 times. I'm just studying. I'm just in awe.
That's cool.
Of this craft that went into that, and Panther would have been much more like that, where he just would have been this kind of borderline psycho. And it would have been sort of the late Matthew Perry as Ross, because when I was writing Ross, I was thinking he looked like Michael J. Fox, but I was writing Matthew Perry's character from Friends.
Interesting. Yeah.
So I kept hearing Matthew Perry's voice every time I was writing Ross.
Yeah.
So, imagine this very serious, very stoic, king, monarch, but his story is being told, by Chandler from Friends.
That's hilarious.
So that mix was kind of how, the Marvel Knights, Black Panther, that was sort of the foundation for that. So what they did wisely with the film was they centered it. They made it more family friendly. And my guy had been king for at least like 13 to 15 years by the time my story began. So he was kind of hardened, and he was like, and nobody could fool him, and he couldn't be taken by surprise. No one could surprise him, and that takes a lot of choices away from an actor and a writer like Chadwick and like Robert Joe Cole, who's the co-writer along with the director on Black Panther. So they're telling the story of the prince who becomes king, and he's still young and still capable of being taken by surprise. And like my guy would have seen Killmonger coming a long time before this guy saw him.
I get it now. Yeah, I'm with you.
That kind of thing. So and I thought it was the right choice, because what that film did was it discovered a audience that Marvel never knew they had. Grandmothers went to see Black Panther. People who would never have thought to set foot in a Marvel film, who could give a damn about Thor or whoever. They put butts in seats that had never been in those seats for those types of films before. And they found this enormous audience. So the film did really well, not only with the traditional Marvel audience, who by word of mouth I think some of them sampled it, and then word of mouth brought in more. Because Black Panther was not really the most popular character. And why should we go see Black Panther? Now, mind you, we all said the same thing about Iron Man. A lot of people didn't know who Iron Man was, until the first film came out. So there was some of that sales resistance. But the groundswell of goodwill, particularly from communities of color and from people who were not necessarily superhero fans, it really ignited something. And I talked to the executive producer, this guy Nate Moore, and we had several conversations because I consulted on the movie, and we had several conversations about it. And I said, well, Nate, just don't blow it, because in the Black community, everybody's watching you on this one. If this comes out and it's a farce or a spoof like the Green Hornet movie, they're going to hand you your hat. You're going to get eaten alive. And he just laughed and he said, he's not worried. It's going to be fine. And I went to the premiere along with Ta-Nehisi and Don McGregor and lots of other people who worked on the Black Panther comics. And for me, it was like a religious experience. I was weeping. That first vision of Wakanda, where they do the flyover of the huts, and then the illusion fades and you see Wakanda as what it really is, the gleaming city and all that other stuff. It was, and he had the perfect the perfect music. Ryan Coogler, the director, he had the perfect music that went with it, and that whole moment where I felt like, myself along with millions of other people of color, where we felt like we had finally arrived. It was finally us up there on that screen, being represented on the screen in a legitimate way, in a way that was knowledgeable of our culture, appreciative of our culture. And it wasn't just tokenism. It wasn't just, okay, some afterthought, but it was true representation. So, I take whatever small credit that is due me in the film there, but there's a whole lot of Brian Stelfreeze up there that Brian, the artist for Ta-Nehisi, doesn't get credit for. Ta-Nehisi reimagined the Dora Milaje as these female warriors. When I was writing the Dora Milaje, I created the Dora Milaje, but I created them as a religious order. They were nuns. They were, yes, they could fight, but they weren't. I didn't see them as an army. This was Ta-Nehisi's innovation, and then there was innovations that were done by Reginald Hudlin and by other people that had contributed to that. So it was an amalgam of these visions, and very smartly done. And it's tragic that we lost Chadwick, because there was so many other places to go with that character and with that cast.
And with that idea, Priest, I'm so glad you brought that up, because I always go back to, is it possible that maybe they should have, and maybe they still in a future way will cast someone else as T'Challa? Because I agree with you. The tragedy of so much more story to be had with Chadwick's T'Challa that we didn't get. I mean, you tell me. I mean, really, I'm the knucklehead white guy asking the question, but
No. I would imagine, if I put on my studio hat, I would imagine that at some point they may do a Panther reboot. They may just reboot it altogether, because that they did that with Spider-Man a bunch of times, and they've done it with the Hulk a couple of times.
Yeah.
I think if they proceed with this cast, it would be a bad move to put somebody else in Shala's costume, unless you fed the heart-shaped herb to Michael B. Jordan, which I assumed they were going to do.
Yeah.
But the problem with that is, see, I don't know. I didn't read Mr. Jordan's contract. I don't know him. I did not read his contract, but I'm assuming they did not sign him to a multi-picture deal, which was like a huge mistake, because they probably could have. They probably could have signed him to a multi-picture deal then, because now he's way too huge, and this is the problem with the Marvel cinematic universe as a whole, is that they created all these stars, and the way it works is, with each successive film, the star gets a pay bump or whatever the story is, and then based on the popularity or whatever. So it is now astronomically expensive to hire Robert Downey, or to hire
Chris Evans.
these other people, and locking Jordan into a multi-picture deal, it will eat up a great deal of the film's budget just to hire Jordan. But that's the logical story-driven thing, because I actually wrote a story arc where Killmonger wins the battle with Shala and becomes Black Panther. And he's kind of lousy at it. They kind of alluded to it in the film, but mine was much longer, and my Killmonger was a much bigger asshole than Jordan. It's a Don McGregor character, and I read Don's stuff, and I just kind of extrapolated from what Don did.
Sure.
I just went like, this guy, but what they did in the film, which was so brilliant, was, yes, he was the Jordan character, the Killmonger character, but he was a guy who had a point.
Yes.
He had a good argument, and that's all he needed to redeem that character, to make that character work and move him to the center. If they had bothered to sign him to a multi-picture deal, so that the studio had the option to bring him back at thus and such a price for two or three films, and lock that price in when you could afford the guy. Now,
I'm with you.
Mr. Creed, I don't know. I don't know, but then again, this is not my. I don't work in that line.
No, I hear you.
That would be the story-driven way to continue with this cast. Otherwise, you recast everybody and reboot the thing. And I don't know. Marvel is my impression is that Marvel Films is watching the DC extended universe implode, and they're taking notes, and they're going, God, let's not let that happen to us. And so we're rough sledding through the Jonathan Majors, and we're rough sledding through, some of the shows that worked or didn't work, and now we're at this place where it's like, as I said, like an hour ago, whatever it was, that it's now become de rigueur, or it's become fun to just badmouth every superhero movie that comes out, and we all have our knives out to just badmouth everything. So I think Marvel Films is probably more reluctant to just clean sweep and reboot their universe, because they see what's happening over at DC and the challenges that the DC guys have, because they've got to get that whole DC franchise back up on its feet, and put it out there in front of an audience that is waiting to just beat up on it, because it's fun to beat up on DC these days. So I don't see them, rebooting Panther. I don't know what they're going to do, but it'll be interesting to find out.
Priest, my God, it's I see, especially East Coast time, it's close to midnight. I don't want to keep you awake if I'm.
I'm good, but
okay?
I'm a blabbermouth, but it's up to you. You be the timekeeper.
No, Priest, seriously, they came to watch you talk, and everything you're saying is amazing and interesting, and I love where the conversation has gone. So please do not feel like I've spoken too much. No, this has been terrific. We can always reconvene for the end of Superman Lost and come back. But
I'm curious about reactions too, because my God, it was like, how do I end this story? I'm really sweating it. I'm really sweating reader reaction to number 2. I'm kind of relieved that's a little late, because now I get through the Christmas holiday without people telling me what an idiot I am. He sucks. Christopher Priest, bastard.
No,
I'm sorry. It's not this. It's this now. It's the thumbs.
That's right.
We hate him.
Well,
I'm not on social media for a reason. I think generationally, at some point I just decided I'm going to sit this out, whatever this is with the thumbs, and I can't. And I used to have a website. I had two websites. I had the comic book website, which is ChristopherPriest.com, and then I had my ministry website, which is called PraiseNet, one word, .org. And I think both of them would get me, canceled, because anytime you express an opinion, people are just ready to burn your house down now. And free speech, whatever it is just, so under siege. So I think most of what I wrote on the PraiseNet is so old now, where I'm like complaining about George W. Bush. I think I'm safe complaining about George W. Bush, but I tend to not mouth off online anymore because, I like my job and I don't want people to come and burn my house down. It's silly. You should be able to not like Donald Duck or whatever, and me not hate you. I don't hate you because you don't like the Ezra Miller's Flash.
I hear you.
I don't hate you, John. I don't hate you.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Priest. Absolutely. That. Will we get new announcements for other? Like you said, you might be Skybound or something, perhaps. If the
Skybound thing is really up in the air. I can tell you that we are having conversations. There's some things I would like to do. The trick is to find a publisher that's a right fit, a publisher who basically thinks they could sell the thing that you would like to do. So there's that. There's at least 4 projects at DC. There's a big project at Marvel that I'm not allowed to talk about because, my God, it's taking forever. But I assume in 24 you will see a fairly noise-making project at Marvel that will finally see the light of day. That I've been working on literally for 5 years. So there's that. There's the entropy thing that's being held hostage. There is my humanoid series. It's called Babylon. My humanoid series, which is again taking forever to get done, but every page is just absolutely gorgeous, and hopefully it's funny, it's poignant. Hopefully it's the kind of thing that will remind you of Quantum and Woody. When they're ready to talk about it, I'll be glad to come back and kind of pimp that up. And of course the vampires, of course, a bunch of stuff for a bunch of vampires for Dynamite. And then Dynamite has announced this Sterling North project that we're doing with Don Lee that is just getting underway. I don't know. There's a bunch of stuff.
Cool.
There's a bunch of stuff. Yeah.
No, Priest. That's great to hear. And truly, like I said, I love where the conversation went. I'm sorry for people in the chat because they had, like I said, some greatest hits questions and stuff.
Oh, I'm really sorry about that. Oh, wow.
No, Priest. It's cool. Again, I really love hearing about your on set experiences. And really your thoughts on what's going on in comics. I mean, that's always part of the discussion here at Word Balloon is, because there's that segment of creators that are like, well, why can't we get little kids to read what we read? And it's like, that's so much to impart on a kid. Let them read Wimpy Kid. Let them read Renee Telgemeier. Let them read Dogman and all these kids' comics that they're loving. Let them have their thing. Yeah. And if they graduate to our thing, great. If they don't, that's okay too. But there's room for it all, and so I love what you're saying, man. Truly, and even people in the chat are saying right now, I was glued to every word that you guys were saying. So that's great, man. Truly.
If you want, you could send me a transcript of whatever the questions were, and I'll be happy to answer them by email or whatever. and you could either post that or we could come back and answer those.
Come back.
I don't have my glasses on. I didn't see them. I'm really sorry.
Not at all. No. Don't sweat it. And really, everyone is assuring you that no, it's been a really interesting discussion. And please, let's try for maybe February or whatever when Superman Lost comes out.
Absolutely.
I've got your contact info, and we'll do it again, man. That'll be great. Man, this a wonderful pre-holiday conversation to tide us over this holiday weekend, Priest. I can't thank you enough. Really, I love where this has gone, and man, I'm looking forward to the next conversation. So thanks for tolerating my nonsense while you're here, man.
Well, I really appreciate you having me. I'm glad we got to do it before the holiday, because next week I think everybody should just, everybody should shut down and shut up. Next week, let's just have peace on earth, goodwill toward men. Really stop fussing and fighting. With the Trump and not Trump and and all this other stuff. It's like, shut up. Everybody just next week, everybody shut up. And let's just do the tree thing and the family thing. And at least for a week or so, let's all just get along. Can we do that? There you go. I would love to do that.
Heed the words of Christopher Priest.
Yes, please.
Thanks a lot for the conversation tonight, man. I really appreciate it. Everybody, thanks for watching. Thank you for listening. Have a great holiday weekend. And we will be back next week, but we won't be angry. I promise you. So we'll have happy talk. But thanks a lot for watching, everybody.